1620 The Zone.
Here's a story of a man named Bruntz who covers Husker sports, boys and girls, like football and basketball, even weightlifting, like front squats and curls. Then one day, good old Bruntz called a talk show, and acting on what they thought was a hunch, John and Josh wanted to start a family. And now we get to talk to Michael Bruntz. It's Michael Bruntz. Michael Bruntz. Now we get to talk to Michael Bruntz.
I'm still trying to figure out getting all the timing in all of this so that it can work with the song, because we have the ability to go like multi-screen and, you know, this. The problem is because I'm the host on this, I'm the only one that can be in the big box, and I wanted Bruntz to be in the big box so that the three of us were on the side and we could do a full Brady Bunch, you know, style open with our theme, but I haven't figured out how to do that yet, so I'm sorry. Apologize.
Oh, yeah, time to figure it out, I guess, right?
We got a lot of time, Bruntz. We got a lot of time.
More time than we could ever want. Michael Bruntz joining us in our stream at Stibbs TV. Go to youtube.com. You can watch along with us. We posted the link on the JTech Construction Zone Twitter feed. As you can see, the zone is being represented at the top of the screen, the Denver Broncos. If they haven't gotten enough love already,
seriously,
today,
right?
On this program,
other side.
I mean, you're going full Bronco today.
Yeah, Michael Severe texted me a little bit ago. He goes, I love the Broncos. They're one of my dark horse teams. I'm like, come on, man. Like you guys have had all your success. Can't the Cowboys have like one good season while we do a show together? No.
It's like every other year. The Broncos take a couple years off, hopefully reload, and then they come back. I mean, there's been some dark years, the Tebow years, the Kyle Orton years, the Jay Cutler years.
Brian Greasy years.
Stibbs is not giving up on 2011. He thinks that's the best year.
Yeah, that's not a dark year for Stibbs. That's like the brightest year of all time.
Yeah, I mean that's his opinion, and but it was a fun draft. It's fun and new and exciting to not be completely disappointed at the end of the NFL draft or Denver just taking a terrible first-round pick. So they got arguably the best wide receiver in the draft. Then they took another wide receiver because I'm looking forward to that like 60-55 Chiefs game next year. Both of them.
Michael Bruntz of Husker 24/7 as depicted. We can't see the hat, but if he tilts down, there it is. Husker 24/7, the proud employer still of Michael Bruntz, who joins us every Tuesday here on the program. Speaking of the draft, the Davis twins going in the final round. Did it surprise you those were the only guys taken?
I was surprised that nobody took like a late flyer on Lamar. I mean, that was the one that surprised me a bit. I was surprised to see Carlos Davis go, honestly. Like I knew he would have a ton of options free agency wise, so I had gone into it thinking it was going to be Khalil Davis and Lamar Jackson that were picked, and you come out of it with the Davis twins picked. But I mean, good for them. They went through a lot in their careers at Nebraska, not necessarily from a adversity point of view, but it feels like they had about 15 different position coaches. They played in 2 different defensive styles, and to their credit, they stuck it out. So I was happy for them to get picked. I'll be curious to see what Darian Daniels' situation ends up being in San Francisco. I thought he had a pretty good landing spot there and a decent contract to go with it as an undrafted free agent. But we saw, I think, the product this year of Nebraska having coaching changes, having so many guys leave. You didn't really have a lot of seniors that contributed this past year, so it's not a surprise that you saw the really low undrafted free agency numbers, when in the past, I mean, even if Nebraska didn't have that many draft picks, you still saw 8 to 10 guys get an opportunity to make the NFL through that direction.
Yeah, Bruntz, I wanted to ask you about that because, Thursday, Friday, Saturday were once again a reminder of how far back Nebraska is, whether it's from division mates, whether it's from conference mates, or certainly the powers in the entire country, of which one of their conference mates, Ohio State, is among. Like, I mean, how far away is Nebraska from getting back on that page where we're not waiting until the very end of day 3 for one draft pick, but we're talking about them on day 1? I don't know. I went away from the weekend a little, as always, more pessimistic about the future of Nebraska football and the goals that they're trying to reach.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know that it's necessarily going to change next season. I mean, I think when you look at kind of what's there, I think Brendan Hymus has a pretty good shot to get picked. I'm curious to see what Matt Farniok can do as a guard. I think that's where his future lies. And on defense, they've got a lot of guys that have played a lot of snaps for him. I mean, DiCaprio Bootle, JoJo Doman, Ben Stille, who need to be productive in their senior years, and maybe they kind of get into that conversation. I don't know that any of those guys would necessarily be, a first or second day pick, but I could see where, probably 3 guys is what you're looking at next year getting picked. And then after that, that's when you start seeing, some of the younger guys in this program kind of get their shot to be developed and maybe get up into that first or second day. I mean, that's just the problem with Nebraska's attrition that they've had is when you have 90 guys on your roster or whatever the number is, I forget, that are sophomores or younger in your program. You're just not set up for immediate draft picks. So it's going to take a while, but it's going to be that's the challenge for this staff is can you develop guys and bring them along and get them into that conversation and not having to wait for the 6th or 7th round on Saturday to get your first guy picked.
Michael Bruntz of Husker 24/7, and of course a year like this where you don't know, well, you've lost some developmental time, and I know Bill Moose, when he talked last week on the network radio show, had mentioned something that they've had the conversations, if we get to a point where we know we're going to be playing football, that they're going to try to make it so that the teams that got more spring practice in can be caught up by the teams like Nebraska, who only got 2 practices in. I'll just be curious to know how that works, going back and saying, well, okay, you got 5 in and you got 3 in and you got 1 in, how are they going to manage all of those things? But it's that developmental time that is going to be so important in all of this.
It is. I mean, the spring was going to be really important for, I think a lot of guys on defense that they're going to count on that were kind of didn't really play a ton last year. I mean, just look at that defensive line. You got Ty Robinson in that group. Keem Green didn't play a ton last year. Both of those guys are going to be counted on. Jordan Riley is another one that was, enrolled early that they're going to be counting on as well in that group. You need to get some young guys brought along at the linebacker spot. I mean, it was going to be a really important spring for that defense to kind of take the next step. Not only for the young guys, but also just, the veteran guys that have kind of been through this, they finally have some continuity in the defense that Nebraska's running that they haven't had. So, yeah, it's huge. And I don't know how if they're sticking to the 6-week rule that has kind of been out there. I mean, let's say, I just don't know how you kind of stagger start times for the 6 weeks thing to actually make that work. I just think it's going to be lost time. Even if programs like Nebraska want to kind of get those practices back. I mean, maybe you just get everybody just gets a longer fall camp, and that's kind of how you account for that. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, Bruntz, because we're going to have Brett McMurphy on later on this week, and he wrote about that yesterday, that it is a suggested 6-week period. Some people are wanting more. Some people are saying, hey, as long as we get 4 weeks, we're going to be okay. And I guess I have had the mindset lately, and I don't know if you're the same, that any idea of a spring ball or a section, a group of practices before fall camp, whenever that would come, I think we almost need to forget about that. And I think that it's the 6-week thing almost seems like the only maybe uniform structure you can have. And if you're a school that already got in spring ball, it's like you're just going to be a little bit ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the case. And it would be one thing if right now you knew, okay, everybody's going to get to start, let's say like the 3rd week of July, if you're trying to start on time. But, you've got some schools that are saying, yeah, we're definitely going to, be in-person classes in the fall. I mean, that could change in a month or 6 weeks. And I don't think that you would get anything longer than 6 weeks, because it just feels like one of those things where, you're going to have enough information, and let's say 1st of July, and you're just gonna have to go. I mean, there's not going to be this kind of slow buildup, I don't think, and especially if they're going to push the season back, maybe you can get a little bit more time there, but it just feels like to me, the spring is just going to be lost, and teams are just going to have to deal with it. And if you were lucky enough to start early, great, but you're just going to need to have productive falls. And the thing about it is too, when you think about fall camp the way it normally is, in a normal year, it almost kind of feels like you get to that third week of fall camp and it's almost just like a slog, and guys are kind of ready for the season to start anyways.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, sure, you'd love to have 8 weeks, but do you really need 8 weeks is the question.
Oh, by the way, one of the teams that I think got in at least a noticeable amount of difference in spring practice versus Nebraska is Nebraska's first opponent, Purdue, who I believe started 2 weeks before Nebraska did, if my memory serves. I think, though, at the end of the day, with everybody now being away from their facilities, most of the athletes have gone back home, and people having to work out on their own. I almost think that whether you got 2 spring practices in or 7 spring practices in, that based on everything that has happened and all of these kids having to go and do their own thing, that any gains that may have been there from an extra 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 spring practices might be all in the wash anyway. It may not matter.
Sure. Well, and if you only got 2 in it, you weren't getting full padded practices in anyways.
Yep.
You were in helmets and shorts. And you're not getting the meeting time. You're not getting the kinds of extra things to kind of build on what you would have worked on the field. So, I mean, yeah, there's probably a benefit, and maybe a benefit to a team like Purdue that's, got a new defensive coordinator and kind of working through that. But to me, it's been more about just making sure that guys are kind of maintaining the gains that they made in winter conditioning rather than maybe taking any huge step forward just because of the limitations they've had.
Yeah, and along those lines, Bruntz, the people I'm really feeling for in terms of just a sports component of all this are the freshmen. Like think of an early enrollee that was just like, all right, here we go. We're going to have practices. I'm going to get my opportunity. I think of a Logan Smothers, for example, and that suddenly is gone. And you wonder about those guys who were on campus and now they're off, and then also other freshmen as well. And I wonder if just around the country, you might see the most limited production from a freshman class than we've ever seen, or at least you have to go back to the 80s or something like that, just because how integrated into the offense or the defense or special teams are they going to be compared to a traditional year? Yeah,
I mean, it'll take a kind of a special player, I think, to kind of really hit the ground running whenever they start. And the other class that kind of gets hurt too are redshirt freshmen. You kind of got that first little taste of college football. You're probably going into the spring thinking, okay, had a great winter, I can build on this. I'm going to try to work my way in the depth chart, and then you don't have a chance to really do that. That'll be fascinating to see how coaches kind of sort through the depth chart and try to make those decisions with only 6 weeks or 4 weeks or 8 or whatever they decide to do.
Real quick, John, sorry to interrupt, but a little sports flash action. Bruce Feldman is reporting that Noah Vedran is entering the transfer portal. Literally just came down. Just saw a tweet right now.
Yeah, according to the tweet, Noah Vedran entering the transfer portal. Vedran, who began his career at UCF, played in 6 games last year, started 2, and he's a grad transfer with a 4.0 GPA and has 2 years of eligibility left. Bruntz, I don't know if you guys had any indication that this might be coming down the pike, but when you consider what Nebraska did in order to get him here in the first place and how they applied for that waiver and they wanted him to be eligible right away, and we all thought, hey, it's a natural. Not only is he coming home, but he gets to stay and play with the same coach. This is a little bit surprising.
Yeah, I mean, it is and it isn't. I mean, I think when you look at the way that Nebraska's kind of built that wide receiver room, I think if you kind of look at, ceiling, I think probably people would say that Luke McCaffrey is a little bit higher ceiling, during his Nebraska career than maybe what Noah Vedran is. And that's not taking anything away from Noah Vedran. I mean, he ran the offense well. He had it on time. I think the tempo looked really good when he was in there. But when you've got Adrian Martinez there for another 2 years, if you're Noah Vedran and you want to play, what do you do? I mean, I think you have to look elsewhere. The fact that he's a grad transfer, I think he's going to be really coveted on the market because plus he gets 2 years. So, I think he can be really productive somewhere. I just think that as great as the storyline kind of was for him coming home and being ready, and then all of a sudden getting thrown into things, at Northwestern when he, I think he took his own flight up there the night before the game. But the quarterback spot's tough, and I think that's kind of where he got caught on the depth chart a little bit.
The amazing Daniel wants to know, has anybody been on without a hat on this
I think I had one day like a week or two ago where I didn't wear a hat, but most days I wear a hat.
How many of you have the go ahead.
I'm like a half Yarmir Yager right now with my hair, so I don't
does anyone have the guts to show it off? You ready? Look at this. Oh, Bruntz, you look fine. I don't know what you're talking about. Mine's all over the place.
I've got a little business in the back here. I was getting a little breeze through there yesterday. It was moving around a little bit, so.
Josh is probably in best shape because he always cuts his hair short to begin with, so you got a long ways to go. But Stibbs and I are, wow, that is.
Well,
you should have seen it before it
goes down to my eye.
I drove to work with my windows down, and it like basically dried the rest of my hair, and it was just straight flock of seagulls straight up. It was they're kind of like that.
Yeah, the annoying thing really, it's not even the front, it's the ears and like how it's just coming over my ears. Like I get my neck trimmed like once a week, but it's the ears that is annoying me the most that I'm excited to get my hair cut for.
Well, there you go, Daniel. You asked for it. You got it. Well, Bruntzy, we appreciate it. I guess we'll get you on the case so you can write about the transfer of Noah Vedran.
Yeah,
got work to do now.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys.
You bet. Michael Bruntz, everybody. We always appreciate having him on the program here on 1620 The Zone. Yeah, Noah Vedran has announced that he is entering the transfer portal. And
remember yesterday when Sipple said that news was coming?
Mm-hmm. This must be it. Well, he was probably talking about women's gymnastics.
Yeah.
Probably talking about women's gymnastics. All right. Well, there you have it. A little breaking news while Bruntz is on the air. I like it. More to come, including Nate Klaus will join us in the final hour. We'll be back here on the stream, and we will put all of our hats back on. We won't make you have to look at our hair anymore, and a lot more here on 1620 The Zone. So we'll take this pause and be back in just a moment. 1620 The Zone.